A show about taking care of the things that you have coming up right after this. Hi, I'm Alan Smith. You know, if you're like me, you really love your home and garden, but along with that comes caring for it. There's a certain level of maintenance that we have to endure to keep things looking in tip-top shape. But as you know, there are certain ways to do things, such as there can be a little more tiresome, difficult way to handle something, and there are easier ways that can be just as effective. So in today's show, we're going to take a look at some of these. We're going to see how to protect your terracotta containers from cracking during the winter. We'll also go to Kentucky to visit the Churchill Downs and see what role maintenance plays in the gardens of this historic place. We pick up a few tips. Plus, we'll take a trip to Michigan to talk about low-maintenance hydrangeas and learn all about this delicious recipe right here at the Garden Home Retreat. Now, before we get started, let's take a little break, so stay right where you are, and we'll be back in just a moment. I recently had a chance to visit the historic Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. I was able to talk to the Director of Horticulture, John Backer, about how the role of maintenance on the grounds have changed over the years. Well, John, I'm just knocked out by how beautiful Winter Circle looks, and I mean, here it is, mid-October.
Thanks, Alan. I think it looks pretty well.
This place always looks so pristine and beautiful, and I just can't imagine what's involved with the maintenance of it.
You know, maintenance in general has changed. We do more with fewer people these days than they did in 1875. We're concerned with the environment. It's an ongoing issue, and as we try to do, like everyone else, we try to do a little bit more with less.
How many maintenance staff do you have that just helps you on the horticultural side?
Horticulturally, I have 7 full-time people. As recently as the 80s, they were up in the 20s, you know,
Really?
21 or 22. So it's really changed.
With advances in mechanization and also new equipment makes a big difference.
Right, and you know, everyone has been forced to do more with less these days, and that's something that we go on with. It's an ongoing challenge.
Well, I would think that what you do here with so much in the way of floriculture, plants play a role in that too, just better cultivars of plants.
They really do, and you know, greenhouse production's changed, plants in general have changed, things have gotten better. I mean, who would think that today, you know, I can produce petunia that big around the 6-inch pot in 7 weeks?
Yeah, yeah. And the staying power of those plants, you're not having to change them out so often as they would have in, say, 1910 or even 1970.
No, things have changed tremendously on that side of floriculture.
You're doing a great job here. It's just an inspiration to see it. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. You know, and I enjoy what I do. This is terrific to have you guys come out, and I hope you enjoyed your time in Kentucky.
Now, when we return, I'll show you how to protect your terracotta pots during the winter and learn about low-maintenance hydrangeas, so stay with us. Now, if you've priced terracotta lately, you know it can be expensive, particularly these large containers. So I try to do everything I can to protect them, because if you do, they can last for years. You can really get a lot out of your investment. Now, some things you want to keep in mind to keep terracotta from cracking through the winter. Just a few helpful tips. First, if you leave it out, you always want to take them out of the saucer. So remove the saucer so the water is draining through the drain hole and not collecting here, because it's the freeze-thaw that gets in the pores of the terracotta, and the ice breaks off shards of terracotta and, well, just damages them where you can't use them again next year. Now, the other thing you can do is you can take a water sealer, which I have here, and just line the inside. But let me just give you an idea. You would just paint this on, or apply it just like this. That seals the inside. Now, what I'm going to do is, you can see just around the top edge, because you can get water there as well. That's another place where these tend to catch water, freeze, and break. This really can help the container last quite a long time. Now, the other thing to think about is to not plant directly in the container itself. You see, I like to use liners. So you can use a container like this, and you can just slide it in, just cut off the edge, and then you could take some moss, some sheet moss, and finish off that edge here, or use some bark. Now, to give you an idea how that works, just take a boxwood like this, drop it in a container, and just fill it in with mulch. Now you're going to have to pay particular attention to the watering of this, because it's going to be very important, because you have 2 pots for the water to be drawn up through from the saucer. Now if you love hydrangeas as much as I do, you're going to enjoy getting to know Tim Wood. You see, he's from Proven Winter Spring Meadow Nursery in Michigan. He's going to tell us a lot more about a hydrangea that is very low maintenance.
Nowadays it seems like we're all very busy and we don't have as much time to get the things done that we need to. And so what I like to look for in flowering shrubs are plants that are easy to take care of and low maintenance. This is a Hydrangea paniculata. This variety is called Quickfire. And the thing I like about this particular variety is it's one of the first to bloom of all the species. This is a really easy to grow, very low maintenance plant that is hardy to Minnesota, and it will grow all the way down into Texas. Very heat tolerant, doesn't require a lot of water, doesn't wilt in the full sun. And in fact, if you prune it in the wintertime, you can pretty much cut the thing to the ground and it'll just reward you with bigger flowers. But if you don't want to cut the flowers or prune it, don't worry about it. You don't have to. It actually blooms about 6 to 8 weeks before all of the other varieties, and actually as the blooms age, they turn to a beautiful pink before even the other varieties of paniculatas begin to bloom. Another very easy to grow and low maintenance hydrangea is Pinky Winky. It has really big blooms, up to 18 to 24 inches in length, and it's comprised of these very beautiful lacy flowers. And the thing that I really like about it is the older blooms at the bottom of the flower head turn pink, and the top continues to grow and produce white flowers. So you get this really unusual two-tone flower effect. It's long blooming, low maintenance. The stems are really strong, so the blooms never flop over like a lot of the older varieties of hydrangeas. One of my personal favorite hydrangeas is Limelight, and it's noted for having these really beautiful lime green flowers. And it continues to bloom long after other varieties will stop. The stems are really strong, it produces lots of flowers, and it's always a big hit in the garden. This is a new variety called Little Lamb, and it's about half the size of your typical Hydrangea paniculata. Again, very low maintenance. Because it's half the size, you don't have to do any pruning, and it's a great choice for putting around your house under windows or in locations where you don't want to have to do pruning to maintain the size. It's basically a low maintenance plant that's just going to reward you with lots of flowers from midsummer right up into frost.
After the break, we'll talk about the orchard at the Garden Home Retreat, and a little later, a beautiful recipe. If you love butterfly bush as much as I do, you're going to love this little miniature. It's called, lo and behold, Blue Chip Buddleia. It's compact enough to use in a container because it only grows up to about 2 feet tall and about that wide. You see, blue chip concentrates all of its energy into flowering, and there's no messy debris to pick up after the end of the season. You see, like all butterfly bushes, it thrives in lots of sunshine, so make sure you put it in a sunny location. You know, I have to say, one of my favorite areas at the Garden Home Retreat is the apple orchard. In the spring, it is so beautiful, particularly with those sugar time crab apples we have planted out there. But what I've done is I've integrated a lot of heritage apples among these crab apples. Recently, Bobby Burt came by and gave me some tips on how to keep this orchard maintained with a minimum amount of work. You know, we let this all grow up this time of year because we have so many wildflowers out here. I want them to go to seed.
Right.
And so we've got plenty of them down this way, and so we'll cut this in about another week, and all the seed will fall to the ground, and hopefully they'll come back.
Right. Well, them wildflowers are going to take a little bit of sunlight, ain't it?
Most of these out here are metaflowers, and what we've had to do is we've kind of nibbled around the edges of this orchard to try to take out a lot of brush, get more sun in, and to add more trees.
I got you, yeah. So when you were doing that, you using a wood chipper?
Well, we go in and kind of push all the big rocks out of the way first.
Right.
And then come in and try to mow down what we can once we've got the big rocks so we won't tear up the equipment. And then come in once we can see that and then try to get the smaller rocks out of the way. And then what's been great, you can see right here, is we take the wood chipper and we run all of that brush through it, and then we use the chips around these trees. This is what we put out last year, just about decomposed for, so in the winter we'll take time and go around here and do this. It's a perfect winter project.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's a beautiful tree. What kind of apples are right here?
Well, this is a little crab apple. We use these for pollinators for the rest of the apples in the orchard. This one is one called Sugar Time. But we've got about 60, almost 70 fruit trees out here, fruiting apples that go back as far as to 1500, even two of Thomas Jefferson's favorites. And then we've got a few modern apples out here as well, such as galas. We've got those on espalier trees up in the garden as well, and they were just beautiful this year, loaded with lots of fruit. So I really feel like there are a lot of benefits to actually sort of clearing out the edges.
Okay, yeah, and you probably lay down some grass seed, to keep the soil erosion from going away down into the river down in the bottom too, huh?
It was important for us to preserve as much soil as we can here because, well, it's a thin topsoil on a rocky mountain.
Yeah, and again, by clearing back and using that wood chipper, you get the sunlight in on top of them wildflowers.
That's
for sure.
Right. You got to have it. You got to have it for them to grow. Well, listen, I'm looking forward to you coming back, and next time I hope we have a bushel of apples for you to take home with you.
Yes, sir, I hope so.
You like apple pie?
Oh, can't you tell?
Now, this is the time in the show where I take viewer questions and answer them. And today we have one from Tina in Missouri. It's about deadheading. She says, Alan, I grow a lot of perennials and annuals in my garden. What's the proper method to remove the spent blossoms? In other words, where do you make the cut? Well, Tina, there are many benefits to deadheading or removing spent blooms, particularly with annuals. You see, what it does, it helps encourage a whole other wave of blooming. And also, by maintaining them, you can keep them in a more compact form. To do this, simply pinch the dead flower back to the set of leaves closest to the top of the stem. You can cut back even more if you feel like the plant is getting a little out of hand or too leggy. Now let's take a look at perennials. For similar reasons, I keep my perennials deadheaded. Not all of them require it, but this can help the garden look a little tidier and it can divert energy toward new growth. Now some perennials, such as Russian sage, once they begin to slow down their blooming, I'll take the shears and cut 1/3 of them off. And what this does is causes new growth to come out, and I get a whole second wave of bloom of this gorgeous lavender colored perennial. So Tina, I hope these ideas help. They're just a few tips. There's a lot more information about this on my website, so visit pallansmith.com. Okay, coming up next, don't go away because we're going to dive into a delicious recipe. Now, even before the last frost, I get itchy and want to plant. What I'm doing today is I'm planting some squash seed, actually planting some pepper and tomatoes as well. And what I like to do is figure out what I think the last frost date will be, and then look at the germination rate and about how long I want these seeds to be in the greenhouse before I can take them outdoors and plant them. For instance, zucchini is beautiful in the garden and very productive. But what I like to do is start the seeds about 2 to 3 weeks before I'm going to plant them. And then I can set them right out in the garden. Now, the reason I chose these varieties to talk to you about today, well, squash, peppers, tomatoes make for a delicious summer treat a little later on in the season called ratatouille. I'm here with Matthew McClure. We've just been out in the garden gathering up all kinds of fresh ingredients from the summer garden for ratatouille. So Matthew, your ratatouille is a little different in that you do this vinaigrette on it, of which I've never tried. I'm very eager to taste it. So tell me about what all you're putting in there. I know you've been chopping up that watercress.
Maybe a third of a cup or so of watercress, finely chopped. Next to scallions.
Yep, just the green onion tips.
Just the tips. I'm not even probably going to use all of these. I just want a hint of fresh onion flavor in there. A tablespoon of green onions, a little bit of parsley, and this is probably also about a tablespoon. A little bit of raw garlic, lemon juice and some extra virgin olive oil.
Why don't we talk about what we've got here?
In this pan, I start with garlic slivers, and I toast them. And then I add the onions, soften those a little bit, and then I add the peppers, the red and green peppers. Pretty much just one of each.
What I like about this, and I'm going to go ahead and add the squash. You've got yellow and zucchini, one each. Now, Matthew, I'm just going to mix all this together. Now, the amount of olive oil, just so those who want to try this, what do you think? A quarter of a cup?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it does have a bit of oil in it. I'm going to eventually put a little bit of tomato paste in there, and that's sort of going to, I guess, absorb, help bind it. We'll just go ahead. If you want to add the eggplant, that's 1 medium eggplant. Tomato paste, yeah, that's probably about 2 tablespoons of paste.
Now that will really ratchet up the flavor factor.
Definitely. It's got a lot of things going on, but they all work really well together.
How many could I serve with this recipe, Matthew?
That probably would do 2 or 3. I think it goes really well with grilled chicken or grilled beef.
Well, the great thing about ratatouille is, it's expandable. It's easily to just double the number of squash you use and eggplant and so forth. And that is very easy this time of year because they're so plentiful. And now we're getting ready to throw the basil in.
Yes.
There we go.
That's about a half a teaspoon of fresh basil.
Yeah, it was about 4 big leaves.
4 big leaves.
Okay. All right.
Well, I have the vinaigrette ready. Actually, I need to put a little lemon juice in there.
Okay, I want to try this with just a little bit of vinaigrette on this.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so good.
Excellent. Thank you.
That really adds a nice dimension to an old recipe.
Yeah.
Very good. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. I hope you found it helpful and informative. And make sure you plant plenty of vegetables this year for that delicious ratatouille recipe. You'll be glad you did. The recipe and ways to grow all of these vegetables can be found on my website, pallansmith.com. Until next time, from the garden, I'm Alan Smith.
In this garden I dream of a bed of flowers. Bluebirds sing of the beauty all around us. And every time the sun comes out, I can't help but smile. Oh, no, I can't help but smile.